Drew Brees is one of the most recognizable faces in North American professional sports. The 40-year-old is a living football legend and will no doubt be a first-ballot NFL Hall of Famer. Despite only being recruited to two Division I programs, Purdue and Kentucky, Brees excelled during his college football career. He had hoped to follow his father or uncle's footsteps and play for the Texas Longhorns or Texas A M Aggies, but was not heavily recruited despite his stellar record. He ultimately selected Purdue for their academic reputation, and let's just say he made more than a few Boilermaker fans pretty happy. In his college career, Brees set 2 NCAA records, 13 Big Ten Conference records, and 19 Purdue University records. He was a finalist for the Davey O'Brien Award as the nation's best quarterback in 1999 and took home the Maxwell Award as the nation's most outstanding player of 2000. He also finished up top 5 in Heisman voting twice, so needless to say, he proved the recruiters that doubted him out of high school wrong. And throughout his career, Brees continued to pour it on. The guy owns nearly every NFL passing record imaginable. Brees holds the NFL records for career pass completions, career completion percentage, career passing yards, career touchdown passes. He's third in regular season career passer rating and fourth in postseason career passer rating. Some of the individual records he's shattered are pretty insane. In 2012, he broke Johnny Unitas' long-standing record of consecutive games with a touchdown pass. He has passed for over 5,000 yards in a season 5 times. No other NFL quarterback has done so more than once. He has led the NFL in passing yards a record 7 times and in passing touchdowns a record tying 4 times. Not only that, but he's a 12-time Pro Bowler, a 5-time All-Pro, and by the way, he earned MVP honors in an epic Super Bowl 44 victory. So yeah, you could say Brees has been a pretty good quarterback throughout his NFL days. He has been so impactful that it is pretty hard to even imagine what the landscape of the NFL would be like if Brees hadn't been such a steady force in the NFC. What's even crazier is that it almost happened. Most people know about how Brees ended up as a New Orleans Saint and how his career almost ended before then. After toggling back and forth with an aging Doug Flutie for the starter role in San Diego, Brees finally earned the job. He led the team to a 12-4 record, but the team fell to the Jets in the wild card round of the playoffs. There had been plenty of questions surrounding Brees' future before the 2004 season, but the Chargers selecting Phillip Rivers in the first round all but cemented his departure from San Diego. But surprisingly, the team designated him as its franchise player and he came back for the 2005 season. If you are wondering why the Chargers didn't just trade him, well, it wasn't for lack of trying. They were kind of forced into re-signing Brees, because although he was eligible to be traded or to sign with another team, the Chargers would have to receive 2 future first-round draft choices in return, which was a pretty steep price to pay, even for a quarterback of Brees' caliber. Despite getting off to a paltry 1-2 start, Brees led San Diego to a big 41-17 victory over the New England Patriots, and it looked like the team was about to turn its season around. The victory, as inspirational as it was, ended up being fool's gold, and the team ended up finishing 9-7 and missing out on a postseason berth. At this point, it really seemed like he was on his way out of San Diego, but his exit was complicated by an incident that took place during the final week of the season, which is where Brees' career really got into jeopardy. In the last game of the season against the Denver Broncos, Brees tore his labrum trying to pick up a loose fumble when hard-hitting safety John Lynch drilled him, and Denver's defensive tackle Gerard Warren hit him while he was on the ground. Brees underwent a massive rehabilitation process, but at that point, people really started to question if the quarterback would be the same player when he came back. Evidently, the Chargers had their doubts as well. They offered him an incentive-laden extension with just a $2 million base salary in the first year and refused to increase their offer. New Orleans ultimately offered him $10 million in guaranteed money year 1. Brees accepted, bounced back from his rehab, and well, as they say, the rest is history. But this wasn't the only time that Brees' career was in danger. In fact, there is a much more bizarre and scary situation that almost forced the signal caller to hang up his spikes. One that not only put his career at risk, but could have voided his insurance and guaranteed money. And it all happened in one of the more strange stories that ever has really come out about an athlete of Brees' caliber. The incident came to light recently when Bear Grylls, a former British serviceman who has an epic outdoor show called Running Wild with Bear Grylls, discussed the possibility of surviving famous cinematic scenes with Vanity Fair. Grylls is off on a tangent about the famous 1986 action comedy Crocodile Dundee when he let a crazy story slip out about a time that Drew Brees almost lost his hand on the show, wrestling a live crocodile. The two went into the Panama jungle together on an expedition of sorts, and Grylls suggested that they ought to kill and eat a wild crocodile for dinner.
I've just spotted dinner. Ooh. That's dinner, huh?
I mean, you come down off that, step right on his head.
Grills explained it like this, quote, I remember taking Drew Brees on an expedition in the jungle, Grills started. We came across this croc, and it wasn't as big as that one from Crocodile Dundee. Drew was across the top of it, and we had the knife, and I'm telling Drew, drive it in. And he can't get it in. And eventually I just grabbed this rock, and Drew's got his hand on the knife, and I smashed the rock on the top of the knife. And that was the end of the croc, end quote.
And go. Awesome. Good, man, well done. Okay, let's do this while we can. You take the knife?
Yep.
I am sure that is a story that Sean Payton and the rest of the New Orleans Saints organization could definitely have gone without hearing.
I don't know how I ended up having to wrestle a crocodile. I know it's certainly not something that's in my football contract, but they might start putting that in the contracts if they're going to be watching this.
Brees has been the center of the Who Dat universe for over a decade at this point, and if he had gotten badly injured while wrestling a crocodile, who knows what would have transpired. Clearly, at the very least, the fans would have been pretty upset, and understandably so. Drew Brees is now synonymous with the New Orleans Saints franchise, and if that all got thrown away for a crocodile hunting expedition, there surely would have been hell to pay.
Of all the things you thought that I might do today or ask me what I would do, the last thing I would have told you was stab a crocodile, gut it, and then carry it out of the jungle.
It sounds like Drew knew he really should not have been getting himself into that kind of situation when you hear his response to it. He told Grills, quote, do you know how much my hand is insured for? And the NFL doesn't even know I'm here in the jungle with you? You nailed it. You hit the knife but an inch either way and that would have been my hand, end quote. And while this was clearly a very stressful event for Brees, Grills calmly explained to Vanity Fair that you really have to be careful when dealing with crocs. No duh. It did look like Brees had some buyer's remorse surrounding the entire experience when he thought back about how dangerous the whole thing really was. Quote, I'm thinking about throwing a ball with this right hand and raising my kids. Now I'm using that same hand to stab this crocodile in the back of the neck so that we can eat dinner that night. It was crazy, end quote. ESPN made a very on-brand post about Brees' off-season training, including tackling and eating a crocodile. But luckily for Brees, none of them caught wind about the legitimate danger his throwing hand was in. Since the story became more common knowledge, Brees has since commented on the incident in a little more detail with the guys over at I-80 Sports blog. Quote, that was intense now. You talk about your heart thumping a little bit. Here I am, walking through the jungle in Panama, and we're walking through this dry creek bed and we see this F-foot alligator. And Berg was like, that's our dinner. And I'm like, well, how are we going to kill this thing? I'm going to distract it and you're going to jump on its back and stab it to death, end quote. The more you think about what Brees was doing, the crazier it gets. Crocodiles are one of the closest cousins to dinosaurs we have left, and he was quite literally going at one with his bare hands. Don't get me wrong, Brees is a great athlete and he comes from a family of great athletes. His father played basketball for the Texas A M Aggies men's team, and his mother was a former All-State in 3 sports in high school. His maternal uncle was an All-American starting quarterback for the Texas Longhorns college football team from 1975 to 1977. And while that explains in part how Brees has been such a phenomenal quarterback, none of that will prepare you to start wrestling crocodiles. I mean, Brees famously didn't even play tackle football growing up. He played flag football until high school at St. Andrew's Episcopal School. That doesn't really sound like somebody who was ready to cut loose and wrestle some crocs. The only reason you might think that Brees was able to square up with the crocodile, maybe it would be all the time he spent in the Saints facilities with Greg Williams.
A lot of guys up at the top. Kill the head, the body will die. Kill the head, the body will die.
The defensive coordinator that famously orchestrated a bounty system back in the mid-2000s. It's possible that with a little one-on-one training from Williams, Brees could have been flushed with confidence and aggression and felt he was prepared to take on a modern-day dino. Just speculation, but it is really the only plausible explanation that Brees, who stands at barely 6 feet tall, if that, and about 200 pounds, felt he was ready to kill a croc with his bare hands. While Brees is fortunate not to have his throwing hand massacred, either by the rock or the croc, he's equally lucky that this all went down back in 2015 before social media really exploded. Can you imagine the memes, posts, and hot takes that would have spun through the internet if Brees had done that today? Especially following a heartbreaking NFC Championship game loss? they would have absolutely roasted him. Think about the response after Tom Brady went cliff jumping with his kid this past offseason. Everyone and their mother was either posting or commenting that he should be focusing on football or he shouldn't be risking injury. They even went so far as to say that he was a bad parent for dragging his kid off the rock with him. And that was after winning 2 out of 3 Super Bowls, with one runner-up finish between. I can only imagine that the internet would have been much harder on Brees, who hasn't won a Super Bowl since 2010. The facts are, Brees is a lucky man. He took a chance and somehow came out unscathed. I have a feeling if another exciting but dangerous opportunity like this came up during this twilight period of his career, he'd probably turn it down. But hey, who knows? If you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, now's a great time to do that by going down below and clicking that subscribe button. If you liked the video, then like the video. We'd really appreciate it. Until next time, don't forget to tune into TPS for more cool videos every single day. We'll see you next time.